Well, it's good to see everybody today. I want to welcome everybody to our 11:30 service, all right? So I want to thank you guys for being here. And I know at our 11:30, we got a bunch of different things going on. We have our group that's here in Conway that you're listening. And some of you here, you come all the time. Some of you maybe are college students and you're back. Some of you are college students and it's your first time checking out the Rock. Man, I want to welcome you here and welcome you back to the area for school, and I want to thank you for being a part of the church. Some of you are brand new that you just thought, man, I'm going to give church a try today, and I want to applaud you, right? Because there's a lot of things you could do on a Sunday morning, but you said, man, I'm going to try church. I'm going to check church out. So that's happening right now. We also have people watching online right now, and we also have our Spanish community that is listening in this hour. So let's give it up for our Spanish community and our online community. Really glad you guys are with us, all right? And last week, we launched a series called One More. And you heard some celebration points earlier that Andrew brought up. And the whole idea of One More is we want to help one more person take one more step towards connecting with Christ, all right? Which is all of us, all right? That there's some of us that we're not connected right now. We want to help you take a step. But all of us, every day for all of our lives, we need to be looking at how do I take one more step in my relationship with Christ? How do I take one more step connecting with him? How do I take one more step along my path of discipleship? So this series is for me, it's for you, it's for those who are disconnected, for those who don't know Christ yet. So we're gonna do everything we can to help one more person take one more step. Last week, we talked about it this way. We said one more person being rescued. This week, I want to say it this way. One more person being reconnected. And with that idea, one more person getting reconnected, let me ask you a question. Have you ever misplaced something of great value? Anybody? You ever misplaced anything of great value? How about this? Tell me if this is true of you. Anybody misplaced their phone at some point, right? And immediately you freak out when you can't find your phone. Anybody misplaced like your wallet, right? All right, anybody misplaced some cash or a check at any point? Anybody, right? Anybody misplaced your car keys? Yeah? How about this one? Any of you, this is probably old people, all right? And when I say old people, I mean me, all right? Any of those who are of my generation, any of you all ever misplaced your glasses and not known where they were? You know exactly what I'm talking about right now, right? You're like, I can't find my glasses. And your kids say, Dad, they're on your head, right? You know what I mean? Like it happens, especially when we get older. That's just part of it. How about this? Any of y'all ever misplaced the remote control, right? And it's like always deep, dark, down in the crevice of the couch or all the way down to the floor, right? Where you're underneath the couch going, oh, didn't realize that was under here. Oh, we might need to do some cleaning. Later, I just need the remote. And you reach back going, I hope I get my arm back when you know what I'm saying, right? When we misplace something of value, we'll search high and low to find it. It reminds me of a guy named James Howe. James Howe is from Wales, and back in 2009, he bought 7,500 Bitcoin. All right. Now, I don't understand Bitcoin. Like I'm not a guy who has Bitcoin or anything like that. But I know this much. When he bought it was when it first went public. Okay, and he was able to buy it for pennies. That Bitcoin, when it first went public, you could basically buy one for less than a cent. He bought 7,500 for pennies. And that was in 2009. In 2013, his girl, well, she was going through the house, cleaning the house, and she saw this old hard drive and thought that it didn't matter, thought that it was useless, so she threw it away, not knowing that his Bitcoin was on the hard drive. He didn't realize she threw it away on that day. It wasn't until about 3 months later that he was looking for the hard drive and he couldn't find it. So they start talking about it. She's like, oh, I threw that away. To which he said, my Bitcoin was on there. Remember, 7,500 Bitcoin that he bought for pennies, now in 2013 was worth more than $2 million. Gone. And I don't know everything he did on that day, but probably, I think he said the girl was gone after that, if I remember the story right. But I know this, he went to the landfill and he started searching. He started digging in the landfill, doing everything he could to find this hard drive because of its immense value. He never found it. Today, if you were to find that hard drive, it's worth over $500 million. When we lose things of great value, we will search high and low to find them, to reconnect with them. And that's what I want you to catch today. There's a story we're going to look at. And in this story, Jesus talks about the value of the one coin. Now, before I even read the story, I got to give you the backstory. I got to catch you up to speed. Some of you were here last week, and you need to see the connection between the stories. For those of you who weren't here last week, I'll catch you fully up. That if you know the story, it's from Luke 15. That last week when I started talking about it, I said Jesus was sitting in front of two groups. All right? That if you remember, I pointed this way. I said one of the groups was the sinful people, the people who didn't know God, who were known just as sinful individuals. Yep, this side of the room. Sorry, Shelby. You know what I mean, though, right? Like that was that. And then I said, this side of the room, you were the religious people. You were the ones that knew God. And what Jesus was trying to do is he was trying to get the people who didn't know God and the people who knew God to understand collectively that we all need God. Therefore, every one individual person matters. And he then went on to tell them a story about a sheep that got lost, all right? So that both groups would understand, oh, I get the value of the one. Now, one thing I didn't say last week that I want to reiterate today, or at least not reiterate, but I want to share today, is it wasn't just those who were sinners and those who were religious, but it was also a group full of kids and moms and dads, kids and ladies and men, right? And all the young boys, they would have fully got the value of the story of the lost sheep. Because back in that culture, a lot of the young men, they would be shepherds. So when they came of age, when they were a teenager, their dad would send them out in the fields to work with the sheep, to shepherd the sheep. So you can imagine every young boy knew, my dad told me to watch over 100 sheep, and one of them's gone. Before I go home, I got to go find that one sheep. Does that make sense? Right? So the young men in the crowd, they would have totally understood the story Jesus told. Now Jesus goes on to tell them a second story. And in this story, all the ladies in the crowd, they would have leaned in. All the ladies in the crowd, they would have went, I totally get where you're going, Jesus. Because they understand the value of the coin. And here it is. It's Luke chapter 15. It'll read like this. It says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. That Jesus says, if just one person comes back, if just one person is found, if just one person gets reconnected, all of heaven goes crazy because everyone matters. Everyone matters, right? That's how it works. Everyone matters. uses the coin as the illustration. And when we read this story, most of us probably think of like a coin. Let me use this poker chip as an illustration of a coin. That we understand the value of a coin. Like you see a penny and you're like, maybe pick it up, maybe not. A nickel, I don't know. You get up into a quarter, I might be willing to bend over and pick that thing up, right? That'd get me a shopping cart at Aldi's, you know what I mean? But we would, when we read this story, most of us probably just think about the value of one coin. And I don't think that's what Jesus was getting at. It could have been. It's possible, okay? But it's probably not probable. What Jesus was probably getting at was something much different. That most Bible scholars, if you were to go and look at some commentaries that are written about the Bibles, if you go and look at people who studied Jewish history, they would say it wasn't that the lady just lost a coin. What she lost was a coin that was associated, that was connected to a piece of wedding jewelry. For instance, instead of thinking of a coin like this, think of more like a coin like this. Think of more like a necklace that you would either wear as a necklace or that you would wear as a headpiece. And on that necklace, on that headpiece, there would be 10 coins. And so it's not just a coin of monetary value. It's a coin that is connected and has monetary value, but also has a great memorial value, right? Like all of you ladies who have been married, you understand that your wedding ring has value, that your maybe your bouquet, your wedding dress, maybe something that was a family heirloom that was passed down, how you're like, well, that has great value. Well, back then, when a bride was getting married, that what would happen is her parents would give her a necklace, a headpiece for her for the rest of her life. Here's what I mean. Now you got to remember, it's a different culture back then. It was arranged marriages, and when the time for the marriage would take place, that the groom's parents would pay a dowry to the bride's parents, and then the bride's parents would send their little girl off, I shouldn't say little girl, send their young adult off to be married. And when she would leave, the only thing she would have is basically her clothes and her wedding necklace. And this wedding necklace would represent something she could wear during her wedding, but it was also the only valuable thing that went with her that she got to keep for the rest of her life. So you got to remember, again, back in that culture, the women, when they would go and get married, they wouldn't work. And everything they had was owned by their husband. But the only thing that did not transfer, if I can call it that way, the only thing that did not go on to the husband was her wedding piece. So if something happened, let's say divorce, although it didn't happen as much back then, or maybe a death of her husband, that her wedding piece stayed with her for the rest of her life. So this wedding piece had extreme value to the lady. So every one of those ladies hearing that story, when Jesus said that a lady had 10 silver coins, they would go, oh, her wedding piece. And one of the coins was lost, they would go, oh, that's a big issue. There's a memorial of the issue with that. There's a memory. There's all that's associated with it. And it's her only piece of financial value that she owns. We got to find it. They would have understood. And we need to see it in that same way. That what Jesus was saying then, that wedding coin, that silver coin has to get reconnected. We need to see it in the same way. That what Jesus is saying is, you are a valuable coin that needs to get reconnected with the rest of the coins. We need to get reconnected to that community. We need to get reconnected, if I can say it this way, to the bride, because outside, you're not just lost, but you are missing. And when we have people who have gotten disconnected from God, it means the church is missing a valuable piece. And we got to get reconnected. Now, before I talk about getting reconnected, let me ask this question. Why do we even get disconnected? Like, what leads to the disconnection? See, you can think about the situation, the story. We don't know why the coin got disconnected. We don't know if the lady wasn't taking care of the wedding piece. We don't know if it just got damaged somehow. We don't know. But I think I can speak to why we get disconnected from Jesus. I think I can speak of why we get disconnected from church. I think I can speak why we get disconnected from others. And there's a bunch of reasons, but for the sake of time, let me focus on one. I think one reason we get disconnected is because we are lackadaisical in our Christianity. That when it comes to our Christianity, when it comes to our personal relationship with Jesus, that we are lackadaisical in it. And when we are lackadaisical in our relationship with Jesus, it disconnects us from Jesus, but also notice this, it disconnects others from Jesus. When we are lackadaisical, when we are, let me boil that word down if you don't understand that word, when we are lacking in our Christianity, that it disconnects us from Jesus, but it also causes others to get disconnected from Jesus. So how are we lacking? When it comes to our relationship with Jesus, how are we lacking? I think one way we're lacking is we lack discipline. That we lack the discipline to say yes to Jesus and no to sin. That because we lack the discipline to say no to sin, what ends up happening is we allow sin into our life, and that disconnects us. That we have to remember that all of us have been disconnected from Jesus. Myself, you, all of us. We've all been disconnected. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And when we accept Jesus' love and his lordship, we get reconnected with him. Now, when we get reconnected with him, we will still sin, all right? It's going to happen. And when we sin tries to get into that relationship. What we need to do is we need to recognize, well, I just sinned. I need to repent of it. I need to get it out. But instead of repenting of sin, instead of saying no to sin, we allow sin to come in, and then it just grows and grows and grows. And eventually we find ourselves where we go, man, I just don't feel very connected to Jesus anymore. And that sin that grows and causes us to be disconnected also disconnects others. And it happens because we say yes to Jesus on Sunday, but come Monday, we're more concerned about the Benjamins than we are about Jesus, right? On Friday, we might be more concerned about Jack or Jim than we are about Jesus. And some of you don't know what I mean by that, so let me just say it this way. On Sunday, we're all about Jesus. On Monday, we're all about the money. And on Friday, we're all about the whiskey. And what ends up happening is instead of us saying no to sin coming into our life, we allow it to come in, and it just creates this disconnection with Jesus. And when we get disconnected, it's not just how it affects us, it affects others. Because there's people who look at us and they say, wait, you're saying that you're a Christian? You're saying that this is what a life with Jesus looks like? Well, if that's what life with Jesus looks like, I don't want to have any part of it. That our conduct affects everyone. I was out on the football field, and our offensive line at Coastal, they have some T-shirts, and this quote is on the back of their T-shirts. It's from Alexander the Great. It says, "The fate of all of us depends upon the conduct of each of us." And I want you to think about this statement for a second, that this is Alexander the Great. This was a time of war, that he was basically looking at his soldiers, and he was saying the way that every one of us acts, the way that every one of us conducts our life is going to determine the fate of everyone. Because if one of us, if our conduct is off, then it could hurt somebody else and make somebody else fall victim to war. All right? And so from an offensive line perspective, they're saying, hey, the conduct of each of us is going to determine the fate of the team. Take that to Christianity. The conduct of each of us isn't just our own personal conduct. It is conduct that will affect those who look at us. Because the only Bible that some people will ever see is you. The only Bible that some people ever see is you or is me. So we got to make sure we are living it out. Brennan Manning, he's an author, he said it this way: the greatest cause of atheism in the world today is people who acknowledge Jesus with their mouth but deny him by their lifestyle. I want to make sure that my life is reflecting Jesus because I want to be connected, but I want to help others as well. If we're lacking in our discipline, it will affect our connection. It'll cause us to be disconnected. But here's another one. I think we're also lacking when it comes to our devotion. That we're lacking in our devotion to Jesus. Like, am I really sold out to Jesus? Am I all in when it comes to Jesus? I'm just curious, how many of you all would claim that you're a college football fan? Anybody a college football fan? Okay, so some of you around. All right, any pro football fans? Like some of you are not college, but you're pro. Okay, so you'll get this, right? Yesterday, college football season started. And I was at football practice in the morning. At 12 o'clock, I'm sitting on my deck. I'm watching Georgia Tech and Florida State. And I have no dog in the fight. I am not a fan necessarily of either team. I'm not a hater of either team. It's college football. I just want to watch college football. So I'm watching, and then as the game goes on, I see the underdog, Georgia Tech, like, man, they're going to win. So guess what I'm doing? I'm cheering for the underdog. Like, I'm a fan of Georgia Tech yesterday at 3 o'clock on my deck. I'm like, let's go, let's go. I'll kick the field. Yes, this is awesome. Guess how I feel about Georgia Tech today? I could care less. Honestly, I could care less, right? Because it was just a game yesterday. But if you looked at me yesterday, I was a fan. Or how about this? The Indianapolis Colts, man, that's my team. Like I am a fan of the Colts because I'm from Indianapolis. That's a hometown team, right? And I am all in. The problem is, since Peyton Manning retired, the Colts suck. They do. But at the beginning of the year, every year, I'm like, oh, I'm all in. This is going to be great. And then they start losing, and guess what? I quit watching. Like the first couple weeks of the season, man, I'm there. I'm watching it. Let's get it on as soon as I get home from church. Week 4, week 5, they're already done. So I might be a fan, but I'm not devoted. And I'm afraid that's how we look at Jesus. That we're fans, but we're not devoted. That the minute that something better comes along, we're like, well, let's go try that. Or the minute hardship hits and Jesus doesn't act the way you want him to act, that Jesus doesn't do in our lives what we want him to, that we're just like, I'm out. That I'm not fully devoted. And what happens is we buy into this cheap Christianity that honestly has no value. And it's not the type of cheap it's not the type of Christianity that Jesus promoted. I love the way one author said it. He said it this way: a religion that costs nothing is worth nothing. A cheap Christianity without a cross will prove in the end useless. A Christianity without a cross is useless. And that's the reason when we look at Jesus, we see the cross. That Christianity was not cheap to Jesus. He picked up his cross. And what did he tell us we have to do? Pick up our cross and follow. The problem is, a lot of times we don't want the weight of the cross. When the trial comes, we're like, no thanks, Jesus. When the hardship hits, Jesus, I'm out. When Jesus isn't doing what we thought he would do, sayonara. We're not devoted. And there's some friends that we have that hardship has hit them, and they're like, I'm out. We get disconnected because of devotion, lack of devotion. That we're lackadaisical in our Christianity because we don't have discipline, because we don't have devotion. Or here's one more, that we're lacking discipleship. And here's what I mean by discipleship: a growing relationship with Jesus. See, our mission statement of helping people find what matters is born out of Philippians chapter 1, which actually says, I want you to grow in your love and knowledge of Jesus. I want you to keep growing, that our discipleship with Jesus, that our followership, that we should be digging in and we should be growing in our relationship with God. And when we're not growing in our relationship with God, it leads to disconnection. Well, why don't we grow? Why don't we do what it takes to grow, to take steps towards Christ on a daily basis? Here's one reason I think: we're lazy. And I know that's harsh, but it's true. We're lazy and we're unwilling, if I could say it this way, unwilling to feed ourselves. We've bought into this Christianity that says, well, I have to have somebody feed me. I've got to come and sit and take. And my Christianity is going to be solely based on what somebody else does for me. Listen, I've got a 1.5-year-old granddaughter. Her name's Claire. And Tuesday night, we were sitting at the house, and we're all eating dinner, and Claire's sitting beside me, and she's got her little kiddie plate, and she's got her little plastic fork, and I'm sitting there grabbing the fork, trying to help her eat. And you know what she's doing? Nah, she keeps hitting my hand the whole time and grabbing the fork on her own and trying to feed herself. And the food is going everywhere, and it's all over her face. But every time I try to feed her, she's like, let me do it. Listen, if a 1-year-old child understands that she has to feed herself, how much more should we understand as grown adults? We need to feed ourselves. We need to be willing to feed ourselves, right? And I know there's a season where Claire was totally fed by her parents or by us. Like, I know that. But there comes a point when she was like, nope, now it's my turn. And guess what? It's messy when she eats. The dog was underneath her on the ground going, oh, it's buffet night at the Finkley's, right? Because it's going everywhere. She has to learn to eat. Now, listen, she's young, so we don't say, go get your own food, right? No, we bring the food to her. Say, now eat. There will come a day where she's going and getting her own food, and she's eating. There'll probably come a day where she's feeding me because I'm too old to feed myself, right? Guys, that's Christianity. That there's a phase where you've got to be fed. But then the next phase is, now feed yourself, but let's help bring the food to the table. The next phase is, I can find food myself. It doesn't mean that you don't have somebody who also is there going, hey, what'd you eat tonight? See, lacking discipleship is not just our unwillingness to disciple ourselves, but it also is our unwillingness, our laziness, our lack of coming alongside of people saying, hey, have you been eating healthy? Hey, have you spent some time in God's word? Have you got something of nutritional value? Like I know I got some athletes in the room, you guys get it, that you've got Amanda or you've got Emma who they make sure you have nutritional value. They make sure you have stuff there to eat, but they ain't putting the food in your mouth, right? You know, like you're not, you have to drink the water. You have to hydrate yourself. That when it comes to Christianity, we've got to learn to feed ourselves, but we should always have a coach in our life who comes alongside and says, hey, are you doing what's necessary? Because when we don't, What happens is we get disconnected. When we lack in our Christianity because of discipline, devotion, or discipleship, we get disconnected. So we've got to get reconnected. Well, how do we do that? All right, let me give you 3 things real quick. And these are the 3 things I shared with you last week. I'll share them again this week. That if you want to get reconnected to Jesus, then the first thing you got to do is you got to get personal. Like if you feel like you're disconnected or you know somebody who is disconnected, then we have to get personal. It's John chapter 21. You'll see a story about Jesus and Peter that Jesus went to Peter where he was at in a lake, and he called out to him and said, Peter, come and pull up a chair. Come and pull up a chair. Man, I want to sit with you. I want to get personal with you. And so here's what I would say. The first thing you got to do is you got to go and get personal with Jesus. You got to spend some time every day opening up God's word and digging in. Well, one thing we do as a church is we give you the Rock reading plan. It's on the Rock's Church Center app. If you don't have the app, use that little card in front of you. Download the app. There's a little button that says Bible. You hit it every day. And the value of that is you never have to wonder, what should I read today? You can go and read exactly what I'm reading and what many of the people of our church are reading, all right? But the other side of that is you get personal with Jesus, and then you find a community you can share that with. I was talking to Stuart, who's on our staff, Thursday night. We were out in the lobby. And he reads from the Rock reading plan, and many of the guys who are on the safety team and building and maintenance team with him, they all read from it as well. And then they start sharing text back and forth like, hey man, this is what I read. This is the verse that stuck out to me. Do you see what's going on? Is they're staying connected to each other and to Jesus because they're getting personal with Jesus and personal with one another. We gotta be personal to help people get reconnected with Jesus, and we have to be personal to stay connected. But we also have to be prayerful. That we got to make sure that we are praying for people who are disconnected, but also praying that we don't get disconnected. Again, go back to Jesus and Peter. See, there was a time that Jesus knew that Peter was going to deny him. He knew that Peter was going to turn his back on him. And so Jesus met with Peter long before it ever happened. And he said, Peter, Satan is trying to sift you. He's trying to sift you. He's trying to get you disconnected from me. And my prayer is, it says this, he said, I prayed fervently. Jesus said, I've prayed fervently that when you sin, your faith will not fail. Now, I want you to see that Jesus was praying for Peter because he knew that Peter was going to be sifted. Now, this is what you use to sift things. That normally you put things in there and, you're trying to sift it. You're trying to separate it. You're trying to disconnect. That's what Satan is trying to do to us. That Satan is trying to sift us. He's trying to get us disconnected from Jesus. And he does it through temptation. He does it through trials. And that day that Satan started sifting Peter, and then eventually through that temptation, what ended up happening is it worked. That he got Peter separated from the group. He got Peter separated from Jesus. And Jesus' prayer was, listen, on that day when Satan sifts you, my prayer is that your faith will not fail, but that you will get reconnected with the group. And I got news for each and every one of us. We're all going to be sifted as well. Satan is trying to sift each and every one of us. He wants to separate us from community. He wants to separate us from Jesus. He wants to get us disconnected. And here's the other reality. We're all going to sin. You're going to sin. I'm going to sin. Chances are all of us are going to sin today. That the people you love, they're going to sin. Your kids, they're gonna sin. Your parents, they're gonna sin. Your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your teammates, your roommates, they're gonna sin. They're gonna sin probably in ways that hurt you and affect you. But notice what happened when Peter sinned. I mean, he looked Jesus in the eye and disowned him. Jesus didn't say, I'm done with you, get away. And Jesus said, man, I pray that your faith will not fail, but that you will get reconnected. And it's my same prayer for us, that when we sin, because it's gonna happen, that you immediately recognize it and you don't let Satan win and cause your faith to fail, but you get reconnected. Which means for your friend, your neighbor, you gotta be prepared to bring him back. The reason Jesus was sitting on the beach, he was prepared to bring Peter back, which is that last little point. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have, but do so with gentleness and respect. That we've got to be prepared to help reconnect people to Jesus. We got to be prepared with gentleness and respect to see when somebody sins, to bring them back. We got to be prepared when somebody says, man, the church is just full of hypocrites, that we got to be prepared to respond with gentleness and respect while we still have hope. That when someone says, man, God wasn't there for me the way I wanted him to be there for me, we've got to be prepared with gentleness and respect to be able to give them hope. When somebody says, hey, you sinned and it hurt me, we got to be prepared with gentleness and respect to share with them our hope. That when trials hit in our life, we've got to have a faith that is devoted so that when trials hit in their life and they look at us, we can say with gentleness and respect why we still have hope. Because our goal should be not only that we stay connected, but that we help every individual who is disconnected get reconnected to Jesus. That we should hope that everyone gets brought back into community, back into relationship with Jesus, and is connected. Because that one right there matters. Just like that one, and that one, and that one, and all of them. That when we're disconnected, we're incomplete. But when we're connected to Jesus and reconnected to him, then we are made complete. And the church is made complete. So let's reconnect to Jesus. And we're going to go into this time of response and encourage everybody to get reconnected. For some of you, man, you have felt disconnected. Today's the day to get reconnected. We have people in our prayer corners. There's people in this corner right there. You can see at the Connect corner. And we got prayer counselors there. We got prayer counselors in our Connect corner back there. We would love, if you need to get reconnected to Jesus, we would love to pray with you. Because listen, we want to get personal with you and help you get personal with Jesus. We want to help reconnect you. For some of you, you want to take the step of baptism today like a couple others already have. And we've got people up our baptistry who would love to help you get connected to Jesus that way. Some of you today, you know what you need to do is take communion. Communion it's a thing that Jesus instituted when he was on earth. He said, when you pick up the bread, when you eat of the bread and drink of the cup, drink of the wine, I want you to remember me. I want you to commune with me. I want you to connect with me. So we take communion, even just think of the word. It means to connect, that we're gonna connect with Jesus. So we've got juice up front, we've got bread up front. There's 2 little cups. You pull 1 cup out and the bread's in the bottom of the first cup, and then you drink the juice. And remember Jesus and connect with him. I want everyone right now to have an opportunity to reconnect with Jesus. So why don't you do me a favor? Let's stand together, and we're going to go into this time of connection that I often call a time of response. And I say it all the time. This is the most important time of our service. And I challenge you to stay during this time, not to leave. And the reason I challenge you to stay is because we are getting personal with Jesus. We're allowing what has been said to kind of come over our lives and to say, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to feed. I'm going to get personal. I'm going to connect. Some of you need to reconnect. Others of you, you're connected to Jesus, but you need to make a commitment to Jesus and to the church. I'm not going to be lackadaisical in my Christianity. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be devoted. I'm going to further my discipleship and the discipleship of others, because everyone matters. Everyone matters. Jesus, we give it all to you right now. Help us to not be lacking or disconnected, but to be connected. In your name, let's respond.